Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Coffee, Tea, You and Me. My name is Coach Powell. I help entrepreneurs, business leaders, business professionals of all types achieve their wildly important goals and success that they can't even imagine. I've been at this now for about 20 years, helping business leaders and entrepreneurs just kind of focus on doing the things they need to do in a way that's going to drive tremendous satisfaction and growth. I love working with entrepreneurs. I've been doing it for my entire professional career, and I can't wait to help many more, thousands more, if possible. I'm lucky enough to be situated here in Centerville, Virginia, and at the seat of the federal government, which is right out in my backyard. We're right here in Fairfax County. I love working with the business leaders and the entrepreneurs in this community. I've been doing so for a long time. And what you're seeing right now is a product of my growth and development. For years, I sat at the coffee shop, local coffee shop here in Panera Bread in Centerville, Virginia, and I would talk to business leaders every Friday around about the 3 o'clock hour. We'd get together and discuss whatever's going on in their business, whatever's going on in the world. And I did that because I was wearing a lot of hats as a community leader, as a business development expert in the county. And I really, really loved helping and being a sounding board and being an ear for people who had various issues. And as a result, I was able to grow my then financial services business into a now thriving coaching business. And I love working with entrepreneurs and business leaders on all sorts of problems and situations, mostly leadership, that they get a chance to deal with. And I have a great time doing it. And I enjoy working with as many people as possible. I see, I got some friends jumping in, hey, listen, no matter where you're coming in from, if you're coming in from LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, comment, post something in the chat. Let us know you're out there. I see you out there, Ron. If you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your business and where you're from, that's going to be super exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and your thoughts. I try to create an engaging environment with the entrepreneurs and business leaders that come on and work with us. And so I'll be asking questions and throwing them out there. If you feel comfortable answering those questions, feel comfortable, to put some information in the chat about it. Today, we have a special topic we're talking about. And for those of you all who have already logged on and saw that information, we're talking about flow state today. And why are we talking about flow state? Because in this series of execution, we've been talking about everything you need to execute your plan phenomenally. We started off earlier this year talking about planning and what the planning possibilities are, how you get your plan together. And now we're ending our series on execution. And I thought understanding and talking about flow state would be a great way to talk about execution. Yes, in order to execute well, you have to have the skills. You have to have the mindset. You have to have the talent. You have to have an understanding of the proper tactics to use and when to use those tactics. You have to have a great, phenomenal ability to handle the right technique, which is different than tactic, to help you get there. You also have to have the right support system and the right strategy. We've talked about all that. But what we haven't talked about in the last few weeks is this: flow. What is flow? How do you get into flow? Why do you need to be in flow? What's important to know about flow? So I got to take you back to the 70s when a positive psychologist by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and that's a mouthful. If you ever see it written out, you won't even understand why it's that way. But that is the correct pronunciation of his name. And this researcher did a lot of research in the area of positive psychology, right? Positive psychology. How do we get there? How do we, of course, we're talking about happiness. We're talking about safety and security, and how do we get those feelings going in ourselves and our lives and our businesses? And it's super, super important that leaders of all types understand how to work with people to increase their emotional intelligence and to use that emotional intelligence when working with people so that we can get the best product, the best creative output, the best performance out of ourselves and out of everyone else. And like I always explain this to people, it's important to start with you. I know you're a leader and you're probably going to be leading other people, but it's also important to start with you. So when we talk about flow state, we're talking about those moments that people have when they feel like everything is clicking. Everything is working the way it's supposed to work. Everything is flowing the way it's supposed to flow. And I love this illustration. When you think about water, water always flows until it gets to a point of balance, right? Water always flows till it gets to a point of equilibrium, so to speak. And that's an important thing to think about, because when we think about production, when we think about people, we don't think about what causes the people that we're working with, the people that we're dealing with, the people that we are, what causes us to find balance, what causes us to find equilibrium, what causes us to find those moments when we're in the flow state that Csikszentmihalyi talks about. So, what is flow state? It's that moment when you've arrived and the thing that you're doing, whatever you're doing, feels like magic. It feels like you can do it forever. You don't run out of energy. You don't run out of juice. You don't run out of feeling that this is important or valuable. In fact, you are so deeply engaged in the thing that you're doing. It is easy to drown out all the noise around you. It's easy to drown out all the distractions around you. It's easy to just ignore everything that's going on around you, because what you're doing has so much of your attention, so much of your focus, that you get all of the appropriate details that you need to get, and you're falling in love with the process. And so, in terms of your ability to engage fully in what you're doing, without distraction, without worry, without pain, without everything. And an example of, I teach, for those of you know, part-time, I teach racquetball, which is, one of my passions, one of my loves. And I can tell you, I like to play as well. One of the reasons I grew into teaching, because I ran out of people to play with, and sometimes I had to coach people up and teach them to a level that was useful, that we could play together and have fun, right? So I became a teacher, got my certifications and all that kind of good stuff. But here's what I recognize, even in the racquetball court. Now, I'm of a senior age, so I'm about 57 years old, and I play. But I usually play, if I play leagues and tournaments, I usually play in the seniors leagues and tournaments. And so therefore the game is a little bit, less high pressure, less lot of high pace, but still a lot of fun. And I find that even if I go play in a tournament that I haven't trained for appropriately, right, I can play for long periods of time at high levels. Why? Not that I'm prepared, not that I'm even ready. There has been moments when I have been prepared and I have been ready. That's far in the past. But currently, I don't really spend a lot of time training and getting ready to go into a tournament, right? Or when tournament season begins. I don't spend a lot of time on the off season getting myself prepared to be the best there is, and so on and so forth. I just play and enjoy playing, enjoy the moment. And I find that I could play so much longer than I believe I could play when I'm in a tournament, or when I'm in a situation where I'm having to play all day. Never do I spend a whole day, playing, or forget 2 or 3 days playing, with very few breaks in between, just a constant level of, play. So that's what happens when you get to go in the tournament. But I find that I have energy, even at my advanced age, even at my skill level, right, to continue to play and have a ball, just enjoying every point. Whether I win or lose, it doesn't really matter. But I'm playing. That's when I know I'm in flow. That's what flow state is. And I'm sure you want to get to that as much as you can in your life, in your business, in your fun time, in your activities. You want to get to it, right? And if we can help our team members and people that we know get to that moment, well, they can be in flow. That's when we find that people perform at the highest level, without excuse, without distraction, without weariness, without anything. In fact, when people are in flow state, they forget to do the stuff that they need to do to even sustain themselves. They forget to drink water. They forget to, move around. They forget to, eat, and somebody else generally has to remind them that this is what's important, right? They got to do these things in order to maintain or sustain whatever level of energy or effort or balance that they're doing. I got a question. Ron asks, what sport? It doesn't really matter what sport. My sport is racquetball. But anything you like to play, anything you like to do, you could get into flow state. Now, the question is, how do we get our teams? How do we get our professionals that work around us to enter into flow state? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. That's what today's episode is dedicated to, leading others into flow state. It's easy for you to fall in love with what you do. If you are a professional of any type, if you are an attorney, or if you are a doctor or a lawyer or a CPA or any type of professional where you have a license to do what you need to do, if you're a certified professional, whatever that is, it might be easy for you to fall in love with the process. I see it happen all the time. I work with a lot of project professionals and people who are in various different certifications within the government or wherever they are in their life and their business. And I see them, they're in love with what they're doing. They're happy about it. They love doing it. You watch somebody in the middle of a good project manager, it doesn't matter what project you throw at them because they have a system, they have a strategy, they have a way of moving that project forward and moving that project along. And they're in love with that system, so much so they try to use it everywhere. I know because I live with one. And my wife, everything's a project. And that's kind of good because when she gets to the level where she's happy with where the project is going, she's happy. And it shows in everything that she does. And it's important. So you want people that are working around you, people that work with you, to be able to get into whatever flow state they need to get into, because it's a precursor to satisfaction, right? Not just playing at a high level, not just performing at a high level, but being satisfied with the performance, being satisfied with the level of achievement, right? This is why it's important to value it as a leader, for every leader to understand what that is and how it works with them, but also now, how do you transfer it? Before we get into that, I'm going to read you a story. And this is a great story because it's actually a story of one of my clients that I had. And I want you to pay attention to the details of the story because we're going to go back and break this down after I read this story to you, okay? There's a carpenter and that I worked with in New York City. And his master carpenter named Francis. Francis was not, though, just like any other carpenter. He was a craftsman of renowned, exceptional skill and quality. His work is impeccable. Everybody loves him. Everybody adores him. Everybody he's worked with says his stuff is masterful, right? But there was a secret to his success. And the secret to that success is that in every project, in every situation that Francis found himself in, he knew how to get himself into flow state. He discovered 20 years ago, when he was an apprentice, that he noticed when he was deeply engrossed in his work, when he was all the way in, completely engaged, time seemed to fly by, and he always produced his best work. So, he wasn't just a person that would sit on his laurels. He sat into this and he really started digging deeper into how flow state came to him and how he started to use it and what it was. And what he recognized that over the years, he had honed his ability to enter into flow state. He found that if he could put clear goals in place, get immediate feedback on those goals, create a balance between the challenge that was his to overcome and the skill that he needed to have and bring to the table, then he could achieve flow state. Let me repeat. He found that clear goals with immediate feedback and a balance between the challenge and the skill. If he was managed to manage all those things appropriately, then he could enter flow state and he could do his best work. He could focus intensely on each task and crafting, whether it was a delicate piece of furniture or overseeing a large construction project. He could make that happen. The results that he was able to achieve were, of course, resounding, right? His productivity soared, the quality of his work reached new heights. His creations were not just structures or tables or buildings. They were works of art that bore the marks of a craftsman who loved his work. But Francis had a problem because there's only one Francis. And he needed to do something more in order to grow his company and to grow his expertise and to provide the people that he worked with that same level of satisfaction and commitment to craftsmanship, right? And help them get into flow state on purpose. So he thought, how do I share my knowledge and my skills with others? And he started teaching his employees with the help of Coach Powell Training Development, right? He started teaching them about flow state and guiding them on how to achieve it and reap its benefits. And he created an environment that focused on engagement. That's the key word that I want you all to think about. Engagement. Now there are a lot of things that lead to engagement, right? But I just mentioned some of them, but think about that word engagement. What Francis was able to do in his construction firm in building a quality work culture around him was was be able to create unmatched engagement with his team. After he did this, I mean, the accolades were kept pouring in, and his team was basically the envy of all his competitors. And they didn't just build buildings; they crafted structures with a level of detail and craftsmanship that was second to none. This story is a testament to the power of flow state, and it shows how it not only can enhance individual performance, but also transform an entire organization. Francis' legacy today continues to inspire many in the field and proving with passion and focus with the right mindset, one can achieve extraordinary things. And that's why I thought I would end this series in execution about flow state. Because to execute so phenomenally well and know that you're doing it in real time requires those measures that I shared with you earlier. And it's super, super important, because when you get this right, not only do you and your team increase your performance to high level, you enhance your well-being, right? And it feels wonderful to be in a situation where you're at work. Your distractions are reduced dramatically. No matter how noisy the room is, no matter how how tough the environment. The same thing for me. Like I told you, when I'm playing racquetball, I could play for hours and days. Even if my body's racked in pain, I can still play, because I get into that state of flow where nothing else matters except playing, quite frankly, and continue to play. And that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing, right? You want people to go in the flow because you want them to perform high levels, but you also have to help them get out of flow when that moment happens, right? So be very careful about how you help your team do this, because yes, they're gonna reduce distractions, but sometimes distractions are necessary because it's an emergency or something that has to be paid attention to, and you could be in flow state and then miss that moment where you need to show up actually. So it's important to teach people how to manage the flow state, right? There's also tremendous increased motivation. You know, if you've ever read anything by the Heath brothers, they're going to talk to you about drive, right? And there are things that drive us human beings that are internal, and there are things that just drive us that are external. It is those internal drivers that we can control. The external drivers we can't really control. And so learning how to dial into that motivation of flow whenever you need to is critically important for successful entrepreneurs, business leaders. I don't care where you are in the whole world of contribution and encouragement, right? You need to understand what flow is all about and how to get your team there. So what are the things you got to think about when you want to bring your team into flow, right? Or into flow state? If you could type about, anything that, what are the first things that come to your mind that you have to do in order to get your team, people on your team, into flow? Go ahead and type it in chat. I don't care if you're coming from Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you're coming from, type that in the chat. I want to create some engagement around this, because I want to make sure that your mind is in the situation now. It doesn't matter what your answer is. It could be right, it could be wrong. It could be, one of the 13 different methodologies or strategies you can use to get your team in flow state. I'm going to get to them all, but I want you to know that the more you think about how to get your team in the flow state or get yourself in the flow state, then the better you're going to be able to actually control that moment where you're in flow state and not have to look for, play time in order to get there, right? Because you're gonna have to, you want to be able to manufacture this for yourself at work, and for others at work, where it really matters to you in, very different ways. So what does one have to do to get yourself or your team in the flow state? First thing, most important, is you got to have clear goals. I can't say this more and put more stress on this point. When you have clear goals, it immediately helps other individuals who are working understand what they should be focused on. And it helps them tremendously know at least from their own point of view perspective, how to focus on the task at hand because the goal is clear. Now, for those of you who had, attended my goal setting workshops, I believe in SMART goals. And I really think you should pay attention to each aspect of the SMART goal setting process. The goal must be specific. It must be measurable. It must be achievable. It must be timely or time bound. And SMAR, it must be relevant. I missed the R. It must be relevant, meaning it has to be meaningful, not just to the organization, but to the person who's engaging in the process. And so it's very difficult sometimes for people to find out what's relevant to you if you don't tell them, or you don't understand what's relevant to somebody else if they haven't shared it with you. So you have to do that work. That's the communication piece, right, that you need to have so that you make sure that you set relevant goals, not just goals that are clear, but goals that are smart, because SMART goals are always clear. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That's thing one. You got to set clear goals. Thing two, in the process, there has to be immediate feedback as to how the person is doing, because it can't be, we're going to go all the way to the end and then give you feedback. You need feedback on achieving what I would say are the lead measures of success, not the lag measures of success. And to give you an example is setting goals for weight loss, right? You may say, all right, I am 159 pounds today, but I want to be at 140 pounds in 3 weeks. All right, that's a goal. It's clear, it's measurable. It may or may not be achievable. We'll have to see, but it's relevant. There's a reason why you want to be at 140 pounds. And then you set a time limit on it. So that's the time I'm going to get it done. But now along the way, you have to be able to measure what we call lead measures. These are the things that you have to do in order to get to that 140 pound goal, which is a lag measure. Did I get to 149 pounds or not? The lead measure is that I consume how many calories did I consume on a daily basis? How many calories did I burn on a daily basis? And what was the quality of those calories? Those are the things that you have to measure on a daily basis if you're going to perfect and be efficient at losing weight. In fact, maintaining the weight that you lost, right? So the lead measures become more important. What did I eat? When did I eat? What did I drink? What did I drink? How many calories was it? How were those calories burned? If I burned them, how many did I burn when I was doing whatever routine that I was doing or workout that I was doing? And how does that all balance out so that I could get the right and a proper weight loss in the time period that's involved? Now, if you're on pace and you're only losing a pound a week and you got 2 weeks to make the goal, you're not going to make it. And so you have to adjust. But you don't know that until you put together the right lead measures. So, it's the measurement that provides the immediate feedback. It may not be the same situation in your workplace or what you're doing, but it needs to be that a person who's endeavoring to achieve a goal, they need immediate feedback. They don't need the feedback of, oh, you did or did not achieve the goal. They need the feedback, along the way. This is a better way to do this, or your strategy is not working. Let's rethink this. That's the feedback they need. And that's the care and concern that leaders have to be able to have with their teams as they're reaching goals, their individual goals, their collective goals, their team goals. All of that has to be immediate feedback along the way. Number 3, is there a balance between the skills and the challenge? I can't stress this more. There has to be the appropriate challenge and the appropriate skill. If the challenge is too great and the skill is too low, you have an imbalance, right? If the skill is too high and the challenge is too low, you have an imbalance. And that's going to create boredom and a lack of relevance. Somebody thinks the training is too much for what they're doing. This is why you don't hire people who have, skills that are way above and beyond what you need them to perform on a job without recognizing they can't do this. Even if they do it temporarily, they can't do it forever, because at some point it's going to diminish them, even if they're getting paid, right? It's going to diminish them emotionally, that they're not performing to their level of their own self-perceived level of achievement, right? So there has to be a balance between skill and challenge, and you have to figure out what that is. As a leader, that's a difficult task, but it has to be done. Number 4, you have to be able to foster concentration, not just remove distraction, right? That's a part of it, but it's about fostering concentration and focus. And again, the clearer you are with the goal that you're set, the more immediate feedback that you provide, the more you've made sure that there's a balance between skills and challenge, the easier it is to foster that concentration, to get rid of the things that don't matter, the distractions, the detractors, that anything that comes into a person's world that would take them off their game or allow them to not focus on playing their game at a high level. That is a leader's job. Really a part of good leadership is clearing the pathway so that people have what they need to be excellent and to meet the level of expectations or the level of possibility within their skill set. The last thing you want to be able to do, and this ties into number 4, is controlling the environment, right? Because as a leader, you have a lot of external controls you can put on the environment. Now, you can't control the macro stuff that none of us can control, but you might be able to control time and place. You might be able to control the situation at hand, how many people are reporting to that person, or how many people are disturbing that person, or how that person is, they're in little tiny environment, things that you can control, you can control those things. And if you do those things purposely and intentionally and publicly, people know that this is the effort that you're putting in. This is a support that you're lending. As a leader, it's super important that people not that you just be supportive, but that support is recognized, right? So people know, oh, you're doing this so we can work better. Oh, you're doing this so I can think more. You're doing this so I can perform at a high level. Thank you. You're taking some stuff off my table, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, just last night, we put my daughter on a bus to New York City, and one of the things she was concerned about was when she got off the bus, should she take a Lyft or should she take the subway to her apartment in Manhattan? And of course, her mom and I were like, okay, well, you need to take a Lyft. And she was like, well, a Lyft is expensive. And so, good father that I am, I was like, okay, we're going to end all this nonsense about how much it costs to get a Lyft versus that. Now we're just going to send her the money to get what you need to do so you can get there safely. And that's what we did. The point is, leaders' responsibility, take away all the distractions, all the difficulties, and empower the action that had to be taken in order for there to be a winning moment that everybody can be proud of. And I know that's a tall order, but leaders don't always do this or do this well. And it's important that as you think through these things in what you're doing for your teams, that you think through what you can do and how you can be supportive. I want to read a couple quotes to you that should be motivational, also should be instructive as to what happens when flow state is really working. Again, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi says, the happiest people spend much time in a state of flow, the state in which people are so involved in activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience itself is enjoyable, and that people will do this even at great cost for the sheer sake of doing it. That's probably the best description I could give you of flow state. But there are others who have other thoughts about this that I want to share with you as you think about what flow means to you and how you might want to lead your teams to flow. In the history of flow, there have been other leaders who have stepped up and provided some thinking besides Csikszentmihalyi. And this one that I want to share with you doesn't even have an author, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. To put it another way, flow is the telephone booth where Clark Kent changes and becomes Superman, right? If you think about being in flow, it's like dialing in and being able to know, okay, it's time for me to be a superhero. It's time for me to show up in all of my glory. And there's no distractions from you doing it. So you get to do it, right? It's the privilege of being who you are and shining at your highest moment. And if you're not seeking that, then you're not seeking flow state, because flow state is that moment when you know you're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and you're doing it at a high level, and everything's working well, right? Stephen Kotler says, flow is more than an optimal state of consciousness. It's one where we feel our best and perform our best. It also appears to be the only practical answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? Flow is what makes life worth living. Dr. Dre, one of my favorite artists, says, I got 79 hours without sleep. I've gone 79 hours without sleep creating. When that flow is going, it's almost like a high. You don't want to stop it. You don't want to go to sleep for fear of missing something. And last but not least, Charlotte Erickson says, spend more time doing things that make you forget about the time. That's it. That's flow. That's what flow is all about. That's what I hope you will be able to get to as leaders and as team members, and as leaders of teams. I would hope that you'll be able to help your team get there. Understand that if they do this and do this well, they're going to be completely focused. They're going to have a lack of self-consciousness, and ego is going to get out of the way. They're just going to be in pure joy. And the persistence and the ability to sustain that moment over time, oh my God, it's magical. If you can get it done, you can get it done. You can create a winning team. If you can't get it done, you're still going to do well. You're just not going to be able to literally dominate the game. Whatever game you're playing, you need to be at a high level, and flow state is how you get there and remain there. This is Coach Powell. I had a great time. I hope you did too. I'm going to tune out today, and you can always watch the show on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. This is a recording. I'm hoping that you all will enjoy it in the future. Don't keep us a secret. Share it with your friends. If you haven't gotten your ticket to the Leverage Up conference, that's how you do it. All the information is right there. It's in the chat. And so if you want to pick it up again, you can do that. If you want to come back and read this, you can always see that information. But the conference is going to be phenomenal. I highly encourage you to come out. The speakers we have, the panelists we have, the associates we have, and the guests we have are phenomenal. You're going to enjoy being in a virtual environment with these professionals. You'll love it. The tickets are only $49. And so why not? And if you can't even make it, that's okay. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be at least 5 hours of recording if we go true to form. And that's going to be available to everybody, whether you could attend it or not. So you can always go back and watch the whole thing, take copious notes, learn about all the macro level things that are affecting us in the business community, things that you need to be aware of, things that you need to focus on when you're even not focused on them, so that you start to come up with some strategies and some people who can help you. Again, it's Coach Powell signing off. I had a great time. I hope you did too. Until next Friday.